President Buhari approves incorporation of NMPC Limited, appoints board members.
National Judicial Council recommends appointment of more judges and judicial officers.
Ten more students of Bethel Baptist Secondary School, Kaduna, regained freedom with 21 still in captivity.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the latest resolutions of the Central Bank Monetary Policy Committee.
The Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria, risen from its 138th meeting last Friday, voted to retain the monetary policy rate and maintain all parameters.
Now, that is to say, the benchmark interest rate remains at 11.5%, while all other monetary parameters are kept constant, with the asymmetric corridor of plus 100 and minus 700 basis points around the monetary policy rates. Now, meanwhile, the cash reserve ratio remains 27.5%, just like the liquidity ratio, which has been kept at 30%.
Now, the committee noted the significant increase in the external reserves, which rose to 35.97 billion US dollars at the end of August 2021 from $33.49 billion at the end of July 2021, representing an increase of 7.41%. It also welcomed the further increase of the external reserves to $36.03 billion on the 13th of September 2021.
Now, in terms of revenues, members of the committee advised the federal government to improve on tax collection in order to reduce its dependence on oil revenues, while also reiterating the need to put in place further measures to drive down inflation and improve real returns on investment.
The Apex Bank also expressed great displeasure with Bureau de Change operators who still engage in illegal activities that undermine federal government's efforts at repositioning the money market and the economy at large.
Kirian, that certainly is not a surprise, as the CBN had come under pressure in recent weeks after the value of the naira went further south, following the bank's decision to stop the sale of foreign currency to Bureau de Change operators. Now, CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele has already, as it were, drawn the battle line with the owner of what is known as Aboki FX, a website that posts forex information and speculations, describing its activities as illegal and undermining the nation's economy.
Now, the question one will want to ask is, why did the CBN wait for so long to clamp down on such operators who it is now accusing of illegal activities? Remember, the CBN said it has been tracking Aboki FX for about 2 years.
Well, that's quite a long time, some would say, to allow perceived illegal activities to thrive. Nevertheless, we give the Apex Bank the benefit of the doubt to arrest and prosecute the perpetrators of such illegal forex activities, following the Riot Act read by the CBN governor on Friday. Recall also that he emphasized that the CBN was the only body with the statutory responsibility of fixing exchange rates in the country and would therefore not allow speculators to derail the economy.
The CBN's Monetary Policy Committee resolutions shall be our focus on Good Morning Nigeria today. Welcome to the program. My name is Kirian Umayo. Thank you for joining us.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Kirian to also welcome you to the program, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As always, we have our complimentary segments in the course of the program, and those will include newspaper review and business. And we all hope you had a pleasant weekend, great footballing activities at the weekend, and I'm sure Sunday was a great one to watch some soccer matches in Spain and also in England. Ronaldo making waves.
Oh yeah,
with Manchester United, and of
scoring
course,
at every match.
at every match that since he came back to Man U. And quite certainly, Real Madrid continues to show why they are true champions. All right, here's our colleague Ifeoma Ojita with the morning news. Good morning, Ifeoma.
Good morning, Kingsley and Kirian. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari is in New York, United States, ahead of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly. This will be the 6th time the president will be physically present to address the largest gathering of the world leaders since coming to power.
You don't have a larger platform, a larger stage than the UN. So the UN is a global stage. When you now play on that stage, you are talking to the whole world. The world listens to you, the world gets your perspective, the world gets to hear your own take on global issues, and then it's also an opportunity to bring your local perspectives to the international stage.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has advocated a new societal approach in ensuring girl-child education and dealing with the challenges of school dropouts and early marriage in Nigeria. Professor Yemi Osinbajo was one of those at the Malpai Foundation Literacy Day 2021, seeking the mental development of the girl child and literacy for better education in the country.
Nigerian girl, where are you? Are you at home or at school? Nigerian girl, where are you? Are you lost? Are you stolen? Are you free or are you enslaved?
We owe our people a duty to educate them. In other words, if you educate a woman, she transforms her environment completely. It usually means a longer lifespan for themselves and for their children.
These programs have broadened and given increased access to those who are hitherto without access.
The National Judicial Council has recommended 38 judicial officers to their respective state governors for appointment as heads of courts and other judicial officers in Nigeria. Out of the 38 judicial officers, 11 were recommended as heads of court, 17 judges, 6 cadis, and 2 judges of the customary courts of appeal. All recommended candidates are expected to be sworn in after approval by the President, Muhammadu Buhari, and their respective state governors, and confirmation by the respective state houses of assembly. Expectations are high that the remaining 21 students of Bethel Baptist Secondary School, Kaduna, who are among the 121 abducted by bandits more than 3 months ago, will soon regain freedom from captivity. The Kaduna State Christian Association of Nigeria chairman, Reverend Joseph John Hayab, disclosed this while speaking to NTA News on another set of 10 students of the school released by bandits.
It's sad for the country, it's sad for the church and the proprietor of the school. But this is the situation we're facing in Nigeria, where bandits are deliberately trying to force us to stop our children from going to school. But I want to encourage Nigerians not to allow that which the bandits are doing to discourage them or discourage their children from going to school.
And for an update on COVID-19, 168 new cases of COVID-19, including 1 death, have been recorded in the country within the last 24 hours. This brings Nigeria's COVID-19 caseload to 201,798. NCDC statistics indicates that Lagos has 75 cases, Abia 26, Niger 20, FCT 15, Benue 8, and Ogun 8. Osun 7, Edo 3, while Kaduna, Kano, and Ondo recorded 2 cases each. 190,563 treated cases have been discharged, while the death toll is now 2,655. And that's the news for now. The program continues with Kingsley and Kirian after this break.
We started with a very aggressive response from the very beginning. If you remember the very first case in Nigeria, very well contained, very few infections arose from that. We started airport screenings and temperature checks way before anyone really understood what was going on. On the front lines of the response, the team here at the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, supported all the 36 states. At some point, we had teams in 32 of our 36 states concurrently, leading the response in the emergency operations centers, making sure we're getting the surveillance data, building up our information resources on our website. Our website became one of the most visited websites on the continent, as many other African countries were looking to the leadership Nigerians provided. At our Incident Coordination Center, people were working literally 14, 15 hours every single day.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Welcomes you back to school. Have a session filled with lots of fun and excitement. Stay safe, stay healthy. Indomie noodles, tasty nutrition, good for you.
See, nurse, she's saying she feels unwell despite my efforts to practice good hygiene.
Mom says wash your hands to keep the germs away.
Washing hands is good, but surfaces can also have germs, and you shouldn't use just anything for cleaning them. Use Jik. Jik's formula has been scientifically proven to stay active for longer, giving you whitening and germ kill protection on a variety of surfaces. Disinfect to protect, just Jik it. Endorsed by National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives.
Every day, he looks after his brother and chases a bus. Every day, he looks after his brother, chases a bus, and learns new things. Every day, he looks after his brother, chases a bus, learns new things, and gets back home. Every day, he looks after his brother, chases a bus, learns new things, gets back home, and helps his mum. Phew! That's why every day he needs his cup of Milo, packed with the nutritious goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa. Milo, the energy to go further.
From Nestle.
You're tuned to Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Next for us is Business News with Comfort Amodu.
One major challenge, especially for developing countries, is how to finance huge transition to renewable energy. This includes Nigeria. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, however, wants the Nigerian financial sector to play a significant role in the funding of federal government integrated solar strategy for electrification of 5 million households to serve about 25 million Nigerians through its economic sustainability plan.
Expanding energy access to 25 million individuals, that's 5 million connections. Increasing local content in the off-grid solar value chain and creating about 250,000 jobs.
He also emphasizes the need for the banking sector to evolve a suitable housing financing model for the country.
We are way behind in home ownership for that reason. And our economy is effectively left out, or perhaps the most reliable source of generating capital for individuals.
The Vice President, who draws attention to the plight of ordinary Nigerians, said it is imperative to prioritize lifting millions out of poverty and creating jobs with all government policies and actions. With Peace That's News, Comfort Amadou.
Thank you, Comfort, for that business package. Next on Good Morning Nigeria, newspaper review.
All right, newspaper reviewer Baya Toyobe is right here with us in the studios. Baya, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning. Good morning, Claire.
Baya, it's good to see you.
Claire, sorry. I called you Claire. Good morning,
I hope you had a pleasant weekend, Baya.
Yes, I did.
All right, now let's turn to the leadership newspaper for a start. And PMB approves incorporation of NNPC Limited, names Ararume chairman. SANS raised concerns over PIA committee. It's on page 4. The lead story, Northern elders take on Southern governors, reject power shift. That's on page 4. Say North will continue to lead Nigeria. Stop self-help in VAT war to avoid anarchy. ACF warns. No region can solve own problems alone. That's according to Lawan. Federal government continues borrowing precipice of crisis, as according to Falaye, on page 12. 11 bandits killed, 3 victims rescued in Kogi. Page 6, APC suspends 16 council chairmen in Akwa Ibom State. That's on page 8. COVID-19, Nigeria bars travelers from Brazil, South Africa, and then Turkey. That's on page 8. Borno blackout worsens as terrorists bomb more high-tension lines. Bauchi residents flee from kidnappers. That's on page 7. Kingsley.
Okay, let's also take a look at the front page of the Punch newspaper. Above the name flag, Nigerians' monthly trade in Bitcoin rises to $44 million. And we have a kicker here, VAT by states, a joke comment. Masari under fire, and Akeredolu says FIRS planned amendment dead on arrival. 2 earpieces beside the name flag. Buhari approves NNPC Limited Incorporation, names Ararume board chair. Electricity. Nigerian gas sales to Ghana, Benin, and Togo hit $6.47 million. Lead story, it's a double-decker headline. States hire hunters, and fear spreads as schools resume amidst rising abductions and banditry. There are 4 riders to that headline. UNICEF expresses concerns as federal government fails to rescue abducted students 96 days after. 26 Kano secondary schools remain shut. 1 million children won't resume. That's according to the Nigerian Union of Teachers. Federal Capital Territory and Ekiti constructing perimeter fence, hiring guards in schools. The photographs there on the front page of the Punch show some Haitian migrants who are part of a group of over 10,000 people in an encampment on the U.S. side of the border crossing the Rio Grande River to get some food and water in Mexico. This is around the Texas area. So you see them struggling, desperate to get into the United States. Assembly Speaker fumes as gunmen storm Kogi Church, kill guard, kidnap ex-provost, pastor, and worshipper. Federal government may bar unvaccinated Nigerians from government facilities. Middle Belt Forum carpets Abuja hospitals over Elafia's death. North has the votes, won't accept second position in 2023. That's according to NTA. NDLEA arrests pregnant woman, fake soldier, and stops Canada-Australia-bound drugs. Customers scam banks with fake visas and tickets for Forex. Page 27. Bio.
Thank you, Kingsley. The President has, in his capacity as Minister of Petroleum, has directed that the NNPC Company Limited be incorporated. This is in consonant to Section 53 of the Petroleum Industry Act, which was signed into law recently. Presidential spokesman Femi Adesina indicated that the Group Managing Director, Kolo Kyari, has been directed to take steps for the incorporation. In the meantime, the President has approved the appointment of board members. Senator Ife Rume is appointed chairman of the board. Mele Kyari is the chief executive officer, while Umaru Ajia is the chief financial officer. There are members, one representing each of the 6 geopolitical zones. Southeast is represented by Senator Margaret Chubwa Okadigo, Northeast by Dr. Tajuddin Umar. The Southwest has Chief Pius Akinye Dure, while Northwest has Mohammed Lawal. South-South has Barrister Constance Harry Marshall, and the North Central has Lami O. Ahmed. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari departed Nigeria for New York, where he is set to attend the 76th UN General Assembly. The Daily Trust has raised concern about banditry on Abuja-Kaduna Highway. The paper says that in January, the Nigerian Army deployed 100 female Special Operation Battalion to complement the Operation Thunder Strike. It's a users of the highway were heavily relieved, this side of relief, and were returned to using the road. In fact, the Deputy Governor of Kaduna State, Dr. Hadiza Balarabe, stressed that what a man can do, a woman can do better. And traffic on the highway increased, but all of a sudden, last weekend, bandits struck again. They struck at a point 30 kilometers Kaduna-Abuja highway in the afternoon, fired at the first-class emir, and in the process, killed the policeman. They rained bullets on any vehicle just with the intention of making sure that the vehicle stops and blocks the highway. So the newspaper Daily Trust is saying that the bandits tend to attack at lonely spots, and therefore, since it is impossible to position soldiers along all the highway, the soldiers, the paper is suggesting, should adopt a synergy with villagers along the road, and they should also resort to using air power and possible the usage of drones to tackle the challenges that is now rearing its head again. The situation about striking doctors is taking a new dimension. You will recall that the National Industrial Court on Friday directed striking workers to return to their job, and also the Ministry of Health to also return to negotiations so that they can overcome it. But over the weekend, Dr. Julian Ojibo, speaking on behalf of the National Association of Resident Doctors, says that they will continue the strike, and they have filed a stay of execution as well as appealed the case. He says National Association of Resident Doctors believe in the national executive leadership of Dr. Uyilawa Okia Hisui. The Minister of Labour says he, as a reconciliator, is awaiting the doctors and their employers, the Ministry of Health, to return to the negotiation table. Dr. Ngige clarified that based on Section 17 of the Labour Law, when reconciliation failed, he has to take the case to industrial arbitration. And therefore, if there's to be any withdrawal of the case from the courts, it is the Ministry of Health, the employer, and the Attorney General who should approach the court and say, look, we want to settle out of court. But what are the demands? The Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors, their spokesman, Dr. Ojibo, says that their demands are twofold: payment and also policy. They said 114 house officers have not been paid for 8 months, and they said they should stop casualization of doctors at 27 centers. They also want 16,000. They say that there are 16,000 of their members who are on strike, leaving only 19,000 out of the 35,000 we have as doctors working. So they said, don't remove house officers from inclusion on service period. Senior registrars, special registrars deserve to be paid specialist allowance. They also want to be included in the scheme of service. They want a policy for the entry of resident doctors to be Commerce 3 Step 3. It says it costs them about 1.5 to 2.5 million for resident doctors to sit exams, and government pays them a paltry 542,000, and this is always paid in piecemeal. But Dr. Igige has also clarified, and he says that he said The Memorandum of Understanding has been signed by Nigerian Medical Association. It has been signed by Consultants Association. It has been signed by medical teachers. It has also been signed by teachers. The only ones who did not sign is National Association of Resident Doctors. He said they claim they have 16,000 members, but it's not true. He said among those they are claiming, there are 4,000 house officers. House officers are not resident doctors. He says that their claiming of casualization resulted from the chief medical directors flouting the law, recruiting doctors without approval. And since they recruited them for approval, they cannot regularize their employment. That is why they are calling them casualized. It's not true that the health centers are casualizing doctors. He said government begged backwards to grant waiver for these persons who were illegally recruited to be absorbed within the system. He says so far, about 4.8 billion has been approved for payment. They gave 8,000 names, and in cross-checking, they found out they cleared only 5,800, and the number of names they are giving is still being cleared. So the list has been padded, and he says that after it has been cleared, the parent ministry will have to approve, the head of service will have to grant a waiver, and the budget office will have to provide the financing for the payment, and the Federal Character Commission will have to give a compliance certificate. These are the processes that he says, as conciliator, they are trying to hasten to ensure that they go back to work, but the doctors are not cooperating.
Well, if you ask me, the process is a little bit cumbersome. You know, I don't know. Perhaps that's what is in the policy or something. But I mean, before you pass through all those offices from one office to the other, from one desk to the other, it takes a longer time. But that doesn't mean that the doctor should not, indicate interest in the process. At least let something get started in the first place. You know, so
actually, the industrial court directed that they should go back to work and negotiations should continue. And Dr. Igige is now saying that if they refuse to go back to work as directed by the court, they will be in contempt of the National Industrial Court. And ironically, they say they are appealing, going to another upper court to appeal the case while they are disobeying a court order from an industrial court. Kinsley.
I think my views on this matter are fairly well known. There's no question about it. But just the latest action by the resident doctors. A court of competent jurisdiction gives a ruling by way of an order. And then a party to the case says, we will not obey that order, or we are filing an appeal against the order. Mere notice of appeal does not amount to a stay of execution. And even if you're asking for a stay of execution, it has to also be from a court of competent jurisdiction that will give that order of stay of execution. If you haven't received that stay of execution, it means
you are bound by
the judgment or by the ruling by the National Industrial Court that you should return to work and continue with your negotiations. If you don't go upstairs and you are told that, yes, no, that decision by the National Industrial Court should not stand, then of course you go back to your strike if you have genuine case to pursue your industrial action. But and there was something I read over the weekend. I wouldn't know whether that was a direct attribution. They said that they were rejecting the decision by the National Industrial Court. That's an insult to the law court to say you are rejecting. When a court gives a decision, the parties represented by the attorneys will say, as the court pleases.
But
and then you go upstairs if you want to go upstairs, which is the Court of Appeal.
Don't they have an attorney?
You go upstairs to another court when you are refused to obey the directive.
No, it's contemptuous. And sometimes some of these things, have to be dealt with appropriately. It is this kind of lawlessness. This is lawless. It's not only when you're having an outbreak, people are fighting on the street or looting the treasury, XYZ. Law and order, these are the basic foundations. A court of competent jurisdiction gives an order, and you say you will not obey that order. Who are you? They should be cited for contempt immediately.
What should that be the aftermath of all of this? Now they have refused to obey the court order, and they're threatening to go to a higher court. All right. So how I'm looking at the mix. How is it going to unfold? if they go to a higher court, should that higher court listen to their plea? What should be, or should the higher court refer them back to the order given by the industrial court? What's going to play out here?
The issue on the table now is, if you don't go back to work immediately, you are in contempt of the National Industrial Court.
But if they go to high court, should that court...
That the first instance is, there is an order.
Obey before complain.
Obey that order.
Obey before
You know why I'm asking this? Because the high court might, attempt to look into their matter.
The higher court will look into the matter at what point in time? Assuming they file the appeal today, the higher court, the Court of Appeal, or if they are going to a court of coordinated jurisdiction, I don't know how they're going to do that. The court will now say, oh, same today that you filed, and then we'll say, okay, we have looked into this matter, so don't obey the
I'm just
order.
asking whether the higher court will refer them to the original...
That's what I'm saying. When the higher court has other matters to attend to. So are you saying that between the time they file the appeal and the time the court hears that appeal, that they will continue to disobey the order of
I'm not saying that. I'm only trying to, fish out what the higher court is going to do.
No, it's speculative. Hypothetical.
Whether the court will now say, go back to that first order before I can...
First things first. If, assuming it takes the Court of Appeal 3 months to determine their appeal, what happens? So in 3 months, you'll be in contempt of an order?
I only want the higher court to say, go back to that first order.
You are just, there's something, deal with the one on the table first. I think the matter was raised earlier, that look, you are mixing up, the federal government says it is not owing some of the doctors, that it is state governments that are owing. So people are going on strike. Who is your employer in the first instance? Is the federal government also your employer? So this is just part of the confusion that you have.
Confusion.
All around the system. But there was good news at the weekend.
Yes.
You remember that major who was kidnapped?
Yes.
When the bandits attacked the Nigerian Defense Academy.
Yes.
That's their news site. And unfortunately, 2 men, officers, got killed in that incident. He was rescued at the weekend and is rejoined his family. This is, after over 3 weeks in captivity.
That's really good news.
There's also good news coming from the 10-year-old girl, you remember her? Who Madam Esther David forced to drink peppered hot water. She is to undergo surgery and she is to be flown to Abuja. The First Lady of Abia State, Mrs. Nkechi Ikpeazu, has graciously accepted to foot the bill. The corrective surgery is to restitute her scaled lips, her damaged esophagus, as well as her voice box. Her broken collarbone, she also suffered a collarbone after being thrown down by the same madam and stepped upon. The Madam Esther David is awaiting prosecution.
All right, and also someone who has been a guest here, Kingsley, on Good Morning Nigeria, the ex-CBN Deputy Governor Melafia, died over the weekend of a suspected COVID-19, and of course we need to really
it's a very sad
pay homage to him.
Yes, his cousin Mike Kala actually confirmed it. He was taken ill. The illness was said to be brief, but some people are speculating that he was treated at a public hospital for COVID-19 related ailments, and unfortunately we lost him.
Yeah, it's most unfortunate. Obadiah Melafia, I mean, he was our guest on Good Morning Nigeria for a number of years, and then of course he decided to throw his heart into the ring in the 2019 presidential election. And of course, since then, he's taken up advocacy as well as writing as a columnist for the Punch newspaper and also for Vanguard. He was 64 years old. He was going to be since 65 sometime in December this year. But he so rest in peace. The stories around the circumstances of his death would appear to point to COVID-19. But there are also claims that he was shabbily treated at one of the referral hospitals, Gwagwalada. There are all kinds of accounts. There was a statement issued last night, and that statement has not been refuted up to now. It was by the Middle Belt Forum.
When such things happen,
Yes.
Kingsley, you hear all manner of stories, right? Yeah, but Lafia is not mean personality. I mean, that wouldn't go to where he'll be given a good treatment. I don't want to believe that all those speculations, because
again, it came at a time where doctors are on strike.
On strike, but
no. You see, when you are in need, you cannot be of help to yourself. Others will have to help
you. Yes.
That's why I said, according to them, the stories, there was a referral to the teaching hospital at Gwagwalada. That is where the Middle Belt Forum issued a statement that was widely circulated last night as to the treatment they claimed he got there. His wife was with him, and all kinds of circumstances and so on and so forth. Then they said to have pronounced him dead when he had earlier received treatment at the hospital, and so on and so forth. But the bottom line to all of this is we still have to remember that COVID-19 is real. It's real. And it's important to observe the protocols. And I'm not going to compel anyone to go and get vaccinated, but you do know that if there are millions of people around the world who have been vaccinated, and there are only a few breakthrough infections, it means that the vaccination is helpful.
As a matter of fact, many Nigerians have really discarded the idea of non-pharmaceutical, protocol in the first place. Over the weekend, if you go to some churches, some gatherings, and meetings and what have you, nobody is wearing face mask. I attended one meeting yesterday. I was the only person wearing a face mask.
If you look at the Daily Trust, I think the leadership there below there, they are even reiterating some nations who now will be prohibited from coming to Nigeria. Somehow they didn't include Colombia because the latest variant of COVID-19 has been identified in that part of the country.
And over 30 other countries as well.
And also, United States. Now, the president categorically is now saying that we are facing a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
All right, I think we have to end it here.
when you look at the age range of some of the latest victims, they're in their 50s and 60s.
Exactly.
Most of them. You have had some elderly persons who have passed on. Most are in their 50s and 60s.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen, we have to call it a day on this segment. I would like to thank Bayo Atoyebi, as usual, for his analysis. Bayo, we'll see you again tomorrow.
Thank you.
For more on Newspaper Review. This is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we shall be, of course, focusing our attention on the main subject matter for conversation this morning.
Federal government, through NPHCDA, commenced Phase 2 vaccination of all persons 18 years and above with safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines approved by WHO and certified by NAFDAC. Special arrangement has been made for staff, their dependents and retirees of ministries, departments and agencies of government, private corporate organizations and non-governmental organizations. To benefit from this special arrangement, visit www.nphcda.gov.ng/corporate vaccination to obtain, fill and submit the Google form. NPHCDA will contact you within 48 hours. Protect yourself, your family and your workplace against COVID-19. COVID-19 vaccines are free, safe and effective. For further inquiries, call 0700-220-1122 or send a mail to covid19.vaccination@nphcda.gov.ng. This message is from the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency.
Hooray! You can now buy and register a new Airtel SIM card and enjoy 8 times bonus on all your recharges. Visit any certified Airtel shop today with your NIN and get instant double data and 8 times bonus on every recharge. If you don't have NIN, you can also register for it at the Airtel shop. This offer is available to all new Airtel customers.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Every day, he has a drink packed with malt. Every day, he has a drink packed with malt and milk. Every day, he has a drink packed with malt, milk, and cocoa. Every day, he needs the nutritious goodness of Milo. Milo, the energy to go further.
I dey enjoy Nollywood film. Orisun, PBO, AMC be my best channel. But ST Nollywood Plus, they show the latest Nollywood blockbuster on top classic bouquet. How I want to watch them?
My pikin dey enjoy 5 children's channels. But you won't add DreamWorks on top of them.
I be telenovela lover and I like ST Novella E and Starlight. But I hear say the series on ST Novella E Plus on top classic bouquet. The Totori person pass waiting I dey see now. And I won't watch am. Sure, I go need pay 800 naira extra.
From September 1, Star Times, they summer you better package. But no fear, we no increase price. Join this offer. Make basic bouquet subscribers just pay for 1 month and then go fit to watch 3 Ogbonge extra channels from Classic Bouquet. This awoof never finish. Recharge Classic or Super Bouquet for 1 month and you fit be one of the 400 lucky people them. We go win smartphone. Terms and conditions, they shall. More value, same price. Star Times, enjoy digital life.
All right, as a prompt for our conversation segment, which is on the resolutions of the Central Bank of Nigeria's Monetary Policy Committee, let's take this background report by our correspondent, Abdulsalam Jibril.
At the end of his 2-day bi-monthly meeting last Friday, the Central Bank of Nigeria's Monetary Policy Committee, MPC, voted to retain the benchmark interest rate at 11.5%, while keeping all monetary parameters constant, with a asymmetric corridor of plus 100 and minus 700 basis points around the monetary policy rates. This means that the continuous retainment of the benchmark interest rate at 11.5% is in furtherance of the Apex Bank's effort to bolster Nigeria's economic growth through the expansion of credit to the real sector. This comes as the latest report from the National Bureau of Statistics shows that Nigeria's headline inflation moderated for the 5th consecutive month to 17.01% in August, from 17.38% in July. Recall that at its last meeting in July, the MPC voted to hold all policy parameters constant, believing that it would enable the continued passage of current policy measures in supporting the growth recovery recorded in the second quarter and macroeconomic stability. Other resolutions reached at the MPC includes retaining the cash reserve ratio at 27.5% and liquidity ratio, which was kept at 30%. The committee also noted the improvement in the manufacturing and non-manufacturing sectors. The improvement was largely attributed to a further growth in economic activities in the country as continuous intervention in the agricultural sector is expected to increase food production in the country. On the management of the exchange rate, the committee applauded the CBN for improving foreign exchange supply in the economy to meet legitimate businesses and consumer demands. The committee urged the Apex Bank to take further steps to restrict the activities of unauthorized and illegal dealers in the foreign exchange market, stating that all foreign exchange transactions must be conducted at the investors and exporters window to ensure transparency and stability. As Nigeria's economy continues to improve despite the effects of the coronavirus pandemic, what more can be done towards ensuring sustained growth? Guests on the program will be speaking to the MPC resolutions and the impact on the economy shortly.
Thank you very much, Abdulsalam Jibril, for that elaborate backgrounder. Joining us to discuss this issue, would like to welcome our regular guests, this time joining us from our Benin Network Center, Professor Mike Obadan. Mike Obadan, of course, a professor of economics and also a member of the CBN Monetary Policy Committee. Prof, delighted to have you this morning.
Thank you very much, Kingsley. It's my very great pleasure to be with you. Good morning, Nigeria.
And from our Kano Network Center, we'll have a new guest. That's Dr. Ibrahim Muhammad Adam. He's chairman of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, Jigawa State Chapter, and also head of the Department of Economics and Development Studies at Federal University, Dutse in Jigawa State. Dr. Ibrahim Mohammed, pleasure to have you this morning.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Nigeria.
And here, seated in our Abuja studio with us is Tope Faso. I hope I'm right with that pronunciation. All right. Tope is an economist. You're welcome to the program. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, gentlemen, pleasure to have all you three with us this morning. Let's start with Professor Michael Badan. Professor Michael Badan, there, on the face of it, there appears to be some confidence among the MPC members that pre-existing measures that it put in place are working, hence the retention of a number of the key parameters. But the bigger story, if you like, that came out of the MPC meeting had to do with the crackdown on, shall we say, illegal forex activities, and therefore the pressure on the Naira such that on the speculative front, we are seeing something like 570, 576. But lead us into why the MPC chose to retain most, if not nearly all, of the parameters.
Thank you very much, Kingsley. You are very correct. The MPC retained all the parameters at their extant levels, and the reasons are not really far-fetched. The MPC considered developments in the global economy, and also, very importantly, the developments on the domestic economic front. And of course, it took cognizance of the twin economic problem, which has continued to, hobble the country for some time. The twin economic problem of inflation, which though decelerating, is still on the high side, and then importantly, the rate of economic growth, which at this point in time is on the weak side. And it was felt that, given the developments on the global economy and also the economic situation, that, the policies that have been implemented so far, both fiscal policies and monetary policies, have invariably been working well. And therefore, there will be no need, to start, tinkering with the policies that have worked, except, of course, to intensify them. Let me just say this, that specific considerations were as follows. Number one, the growth rate of the economy. No doubt, the second quarter data show that the gross domestic product growth rate has improved very significantly, in relation to the same period, in 2020, when there was a recession. In fact, the second quarter GDP growth in 2020 heralded a recession, in the country, about minus 6.1%. But the second quarter growth this year, increased positively, by about 5.01%. So if you look at, the two, if you compare the growth in the second quarter this year in relation to last year, it suggests that a lot had been done, by way of policy implementation, monetary and fiscal policy, to resuscitate economic activities, to grow the economy, grow jobs, and also reduce poverty. And the policies seem to be working because the economy as of today is on the path of recovery. And the recovery is on a satisfactory, level, even though the economy had not achieved full recovery like we have witnessed, in some of the advanced economies. And so it was felt that in order to achieve full recovery and sustained, growth on a quarter-by-quarter basis, that it will be important to intensify the implementation of the fiscal policy measures and the monetary policy measures that had been in place. Otherwise, if we say, let us, normalize monetary policy like you hear now in the advanced countries, normalizing monetary policy will mean, seizure or reduction in the various interventions aimed at stimulating growth. And it will mean tightening of monetary policy. And that in itself will not be helpful to the desire to up the growth rate of the economy. So that's number one. The issue of fragile and low growth that we have achieved so far, and the need to ensure that the growth momentum of the economy is not dampened, but rather, significantly boosted. And then secondly, the need not to worsen inflation. The inflation, like the background reporter rightly, stated, the inflation rate had been decelerating since, March, this year, for 5 months now. But to us, the rate of deceleration is rather sluggish, to the extent that as at August, the rate of inflation stood at 17.01%. That is still high, and for me, it's an uncomfortable rate which needs to be further reduced. And therefore, we cannot do anything that will, make the inflation rate, stop decelerating, reverse gear, and start increasing again. That could happen if, we were to say, let us ease monetary policy by reducing monetary policy rate or cash reserve requirement, which could lead to expansion, of money supply. And so it was felt that there will be no need to, tamper with the various rates. But at the same time, to actualize the objective of stimulating growth in a very strong manner, that the central bank will continue with the development finance interventions, which it had implemented for quite some time. And if you look at the data, you will find that the interventions, have been very largely successful. Let me just give you a few figures. The total disbursements on the various development finance interventions since, their inception has been very, very, impressive. To various sectors, agriculture, about 1.7 trillion had been disbursed through various initiatives in that sector. Then manufacturing and industry, also about 1.75 trillion had been disbursed. Then energy stroke infrastructure, we have about 1.714 trillion. Then in the area of export stimulation, the bank has also been involved through export grants, development funds, and so on. About 145 billion naira had been disbursed. Then the MSMEs, 594 billion have been disbursed so far. The health sector, since the emergence of COVID-19, last year, the health sector has attracted disbursements of about 102.9 billion, and the services sector is not left out, including the bank's intervention in the creative industry to stimulate, output there, engage our youth, and so on. That one has also attracted substantial amount of money. So,
Professor Badan, we would like to, pause you there for a while, and thank you indeed for the elaborate explanations that you have given. And I know that many Nigerians, from your point of view, would at some point, begin to feel the positive impact of this retention that you are talking about, because it's until it trickles down to the streets, where the ordinary Nigerians will begin to feel this impact, that we will say that we are now, it's now Uhuru. All right, so we'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Now, Dr. Ibrahim Mohammed Adam, you were nodding your head, when Professor Badan was doing his explanation. Now, the MPC views retention of the parameters at their extant levels as the best option for macroeconomic stability. What is your own view?
Thank you very much once again. It is indeed comforting looking at the positive figures released by the NPR communique, and despite the devastating effect of COVID-19 pandemic, the GDP growth, the inflation, all are showing positive figures, in that the GDP, as rightly mentioned by the previous two speakers, in Q2, grown to 5.01%, and the inflation also, as at August, 17.01%. However, to ordinary Nigerian who go to the nearby market will actually not see this result. The prices of staple foods are rising far beyond what the figures are being released. So it is really a cause for concern. Until and unless when these statistics have actually hold water in reality to an ordinary Nigerian, Nigerians will continue to actually complain about this. In particular, the distortions in the market actually is part of the reasons why the aggregate inflation could be decelerating, but cost of living is still rising. The cost of these goods and services, particularly food items, are on the rise. And this is partly, could partly be explained by some of the speculative activities. Actually, the government need to actually do something about this. The speculative activities, some of these foods are actually being hoarded, and their prices are beyond the reach of an ordinary person. So I want to go by the assertion of Prof that yes, looking at these positive outlooks so far, it is best for the CBN to retain these monetary parameters, and for the rest of the year, that is the remaining quarter, we are very optimistic that the trends will continue in positive direction. So it is quite comforting. However, like I said, the distortions need to be actually corrected, and most of the activities of especially the middlemen need to be curtailed in order to translate these positive developments to ordinary Nigerian.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ibrahim, for your opening comments. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Now, back to our studios here, Tokpe Faswa. Of course, you listened to the other two guests quite clearly. It is the case that the central bank reads that the Nigerian economy is on the path of recovery, but the intensity of that recovery is what is unstated, whether it's fragile or whether it is strong. But the point has also been made by Dr. Ibrahim that yes, aggregate inflation is around about 17% now, 17.01%, but the cost of living all around is rising. So take your comments from just an overall analysis of what the central bank has done and see what impact that is likely to have on macroeconomic stability in the first instance.
Well, thank you very much. So basically, the contention in this kind of instance is, for a while now, central bank has always maintained the rates, and then people begin to wonder, is it that they don't have ideas, what's going on with the MPC and so on, the Monetary Policy Committee. But like Professor Badan has said, you don't want to rock the boat at some point. If we're coming out from minus 6.1% growth, and then we got to 0.11, 0.5, now we're doing 5.1% GDP growth in the last quarter. The central bank or the Monetary Policy Committee may want to observe how things are going. Luckily, we did not go into such a slump, quote and unquote, compared with other countries. There were countries where when we were posting minus 6.1, they were posting minus 50% drop in their GDP. That means like half of the economy was wiped out. Then you begin to wonder why that is the case. So there could be several explanations. The fact that we have a large informal economy, many of the times not measured, that one has to be estimated, because there are many places where the MBS cannot even get to, where maybe the estimates they will get from their enumerators may not be as accurate as it should be. And also you begin to question, okay, how well are we measuring the economy as a whole? But 6.1%. Also, one very critical thing you could actually mention is maybe we have hit the rock bottom before the present issues are coming up. I mean, Professor Badan, Dr. Adam are talking about how is this impacting on the people. My opinion has always been for a while that, if you study the American economy in the 1930s, in the Great Depression, and I must say, that was the only era when the word economic depression seemed to have been used. So you wonder what is different between a recession and a depression. Many economies went into a deep recession, as a result of COVID, because everybody had to sit at home, markets went to open, and so on. But the symptoms of a depression have always been with us. We're talking about high unemployment rate, high crime rate. Okay, my last article, I wrote about the insecurity and all of that in every state of the Federation. Very alarming. High poverty rate, high crime rate, high illiteracy rate, unemployment, high unemployment rate. We're sitting on about 33% unemployment rate now, and youth unemployment alone is 42.5%. Underemployment is 22.5%, meaning that about 60% plus of people who should be working are either not working at all or just managing, doing one thing or the other. So I would rather not I would rather not follow the line of trying to yoke the Nigerian economy with the advanced economies. Their problems are different from ours. You know, the larger component of our inflation is actually food inflation. If we're reporting 17% inflation on the average, you'll be sure that food inflation is around 22%. And that's alarming because at the end of the day, the food aspect, is the most critical aspect of human survival, So, and then you begin to wonder, okay, why do we have this food inflation? Insecurity comes in. Farmers are not able to go to farms. People are afraid of even going to farms. Insecurity, people are being hijacked and kidnapped in their farms. Okay, the transportation to town is still a major issue. We are still doing seasonal planting. We only about 8% of our land is irrigated at all. So when it's rainy season, we plant. When it's dry season, everybody sleeps at home. So those are the things that we need to. So our job is pretty much very well cut out. The MPC cannot tamper with the monetary policy rate, which is an indication, a kind of a benchmark rate for the commercial banks to take a cue, even though we know they don't take a cue. If they increase the MPR, the monetary policy rate, that means that the banks will also begin to think of increasing their rates and so on and so forth. But if they increase the rate, what happens? According to standard economics, if you increase the rate, you are saying that the bank should increase their rate. You are saying that people should not go to the bank to borrow money, or people should be discouraged from borrowing money. Therefore, economic growth will go down because people are not borrowing money to start new businesses and so on. If you reduce the rate, you are saying that people should go to the banks to borrow money in order to expand production and take on different kind of initiatives and so on. That means that there'll be more money in circulation. That means inflation will go up. So you don't want inflation to go up beyond 17.1%, where it is now, which is scary. And if you like, it's quite debilitating because it's not what normal economies should be sitting on, if 17.1%. Okay, but you also don't want the growth rate of 5% to be affected. Note that the Chinese, for example, the last growth rate that they released in China was 18.12%. And we're talking about a 15 trillion economy. Okay, so you're talking about maybe they're adding about another 1.2 trillion to the economy every year, which, that is about 3 times the Nigerian economy. So China is adding 3 Nigerian economies to their economy on a yearly basis. Now, so if you want to challenge me on an economic front, I'll probably say that we should pursue growth. We should pursue growth, and in pursuing growth, that means that, we're going to be looking at more employment for our people. I think that the real challenge we have is tackle unemployment in order to reduce insecurity, while we're really struggling to look at what factors cause the high inflation we have. So on one hand is some of the interventions of the government, releases money, and then there's a kind of demand push inflation. However, the cost of getting raw materials and other inputs as well is going up, and therefore you have a supply side inflation as well, meaning that goods going into the market are costing more. And then the foreign exchange, which you mentioned earlier on, and which, a major issue, the fact that we still haven't hunkered down in this economy to say, what can we really, really, really produce for ourselves beyond the primary products like agriculture? If you talk about our biggest product, our biggest export, crude oil, we have absolutely no input in crude oil. We just show up. The white man brings the equipment, trains a few of our people to be able to operate it. The rest are keeping the accounts and shuffling the papers. And that's where our main thing comes from. So a lot of the input in our production and our manufacturing in this country has to come from abroad. And of course, when you have this problem with the foreign exchange sector, that is also going to pass down, the exchange rate issues are going to also pass down to the cost of the goods that are produced in Nigeria and so on. So what should we do? Now, the central bank has said that they are able to fulfill the legitimate applications for foreign exchange, okay? I would say that they should continue to maintain that trajectory and even expand what they can do, so that the concern of the central bank is actually the official rate, their official rate. When you talk about black market, a central bank is not supposed to be, sweating about what goes on in the black market. It's called black market for a reason. However, the black market also affects the perception of, the rates in the economy and where things are going. So they need a lot of tact in order to be able to handle this. Nigeria is a country, given, maybe we have about $38 billion in reserves and so on. And however, the major issue being that most Nigerians like to talk down their country. Most Nigerians, they take a negative view of their country. And the perception, patriotism, cynicism is 70% of the rates that you see in the market. So Nigeria is a country that's ripe for, in financial markets, for what they call speculative attacks. And I think that's what's going on. That the Naira is being attacked. Guys are saying, okay, let's take a position that this Naira will be devalued. A lot of guys have taken position that it will go down to 700 or whatever Naira and so on. The CBN has to be very tactful in knowing how to manage that while keeping focused on the official rate and ensuring that more and more they can bring on board the legitimate transactions that people require. Of course, and I'll stop in a while, of course, unfortunately, even when you talk about this BTA, PTA, Bureau de Change issue, for example, I don't believe that a country should have 5,000, 6,000 Bureau de Change. Nigeria set a world record in that regard. There's nowhere else in the world where you have 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 Bureau de... it's a joke. It's a very expensive joke. In the United Kingdom, they have about 145 Bureau de Change the last time I checked. In the United Arab Emirates, and these are tourist centers, they have 130, exactly 130. However, we found a scenario where everybody is carrying Bureau de Change licenses, 3, 4, 5 in their briefcases in this country. Politicians have, all sorts of people have, traditional rulers have, retired generals have, former bankers have, no offices. So you cannot supervise that many Bureau de Change. And therefore, in saying that, look, we have to stop this joke where the central bank was getting 500 new requests maybe every week, 500 new requests every week or maybe every month. You could see that there's something in there. People are just sitting down, collecting the cash from central bank, stepping outside, exchanging it in the black market. Come on, we can't continue like that. Nigerians must understand that this is the only country we have. And when we're talking about economics, it's not just about who makes money and the Naira and Kobo. It's also, you cannot discuss economics without discussing sociology, psychology, and social psychology, all of them, without discussing politics and saying, listen, do we need a country? And where are we going with this country? So we have all that volatility going on in the foreign exchange market. CBN has to step up. If you are saying you can meet up the request of legitimate importers, please try and sit up and meet up to those expectations so that we can look away from this idea. People who don't have $1 holdings are busy sharing, Nigeria, the Naira is 500 and this, oh my God. And of course, in the theory of currency crisis, there's what is called self-fulfilling prophecy. The second is what they call the second generation currency crisis in international finance. And it says that if a people believe that their currency will crash, then it will crash. So it depends. However, when it does crash, from what people are saying and sometimes expecting, especially those who believe that they are cocooned, they have enough dollar holdings, they have enough, if you like, investments abroad and so on. If the Naira goes to paper, all right, like Zimbabwe, everybody will be affected. It's said that maybe you are not in the country. If they are still in this country, they'll be affected. If the man on the street needs a wheelbarrow of currency to buy bread, then you cannot dare drive on the street. And if they run abroad, they will leave some of their loved ones here. If we think we have crime now, what will happen on that day? You can't even imagine. So I think we need to be extremely careful. But I believe that all the guys who are in charge are also listening to some of these issues.
Well, as a matter of fact, Kinsley, he has raised very pertinent points with respect to the issue of our economic situation presently. And I would like to ask Professor Badan to key into this and take up some of the issues that he has raised. He did not, go against MPC's decisions, totally, but has also added some points that will enable the MPC actually to perhaps review or look into what has taken place and see how those areas he pointed will be affected. He talked about high unemployment rate, talked about food inflation, insecurity. The 7.1% inflation rate is high. Ordinarily, it is high, as even though you said, look, that is manageable at this point. So, looking at all the issues he raised, do you think it is necessary to continue to, retain the parameters as you have pointed out, or should there be a review, perhaps in due course, to see how further decisions can affect the issues he raised positively?
Thank you very much, Kirian. I agree with you that Tokwe has pointed to a number of pertinent issues currently considered as important to deal with in the Nigerian economy. But let me also say that, these same issues are the back of the minds of Monetary Policy Committee members in taking their, decision as to the stance or direction of monetary policy. Issue of growth is pertinent, and that's the reason why the central bank, engages in its various development financing interventions. The disbursements of which to date, from 2009 to the present time, I earlier, pointed out. The essence of those interventions is to tackle, the issue of growth, stimulate, national output, increase investment in the various productive sectors, and by so doing, raise employment level and income for people, and ipso facto, reduce the level of poverty in the country. So the bank has all this at the back of his mind in taking decisions. But, the issue is this, and Tokwe also indirectly pointed it out. The challenges which the bank faces in attempt to take policy decisions, either by tightening monetary policy or loosening monetary policy, and he pointed out very clearly, what could happen if the central bank reduces the monetary policy rate, for example. The expectation will be that the lending rate will reduce and investors can borrow cheaply and then invest, expand the economy. But, that means pumping a lot of money into the system. And that in itself, if it happens, can worsen inflation. And at the moment, inflation rate is going down. And we are hoping that it will continue to go down at a faster pace. And so if you're losing, monetary policy now makes money easily available and very cheap, and, it could go and fuel demand, and then invariably inflation will rise. And again, if the bank says at this point in time, let's tighten monetary policy by increasing the monetary policy rate, which he rightly mentioned, would be translated into high lending rates. That in itself is antithetical to the objective of stimulating growth. It means that that policy will hurt investment. Many businesses may not be able to borrow at such elevated interest rates. So you see, that's the dilemma which the central bank faces, which we must bear at the back of our mind. The dilemma is rather peculiar to the country. Not many other countries experience the problem of having high inflation and very low growth at the same time. And most countries, like the advanced countries, during the COVID-19 induced recessions, their inflation rates actually went down, actually reduced, such that now that the economies are recovering, the inflation rates ticking up. So in such a situation at that time, the policy decision was very clear. All that the government wanted to do, government central bank, was to deploy their monetary and fiscal policy arsenals to lifting their economies out of recession. And so that was the reason why their central banks reduced, the policy rates. The government increased spending with numerous or huge fiscal policy packages. Both the bank and the government were moving in the same direction. And by so doing, they were able to lift their economies out of recession very quickly. But it's not the case in Nigeria. If we try to say, okay, let's concentrate on lifting the economy out of recession or improving growth without balancing the need for inflation, you will find that the inflation can go through the rooftop, which will hurt the citizens of the country. So the central bank always strives to strike a delicate balance between the objective of reining in inflation and then stimulating growth at the same time. And that is the reason why the bank has elected to use the development finance interventions option to stimulate aggregate output, aggregate supply, in the hope that that would also reduce the prices of goods and services in the economy. And in the case of food prices, food inflation, which Tokwe referred to, increased production of agricultural output, is expected to reduce the food inflation. So the problem that the bank is facing is not experienced by other countries. They are in a position to say, let us fight inflation or stimulate output without the kind of policy dilemma which the central bank has found itself. So invariably, the position taken by the bank at this point in time of holding the policy parameters constant derives from the fact that the holding position without tightening or loosening has tended to yield positive results. And it is important to further consolidate, because if you say you are loosening or tightening, there are implications which will offset the goal of the other ones. Now, the issue raised by Tokwe about recession versus depression, I will just say that the economy is not in depression, although there are a few signs that you normally get during depression or recession. That is high rate of unemployment. The recession will happen if you have negative growth rates or low business activities in just a few quarters. But when it is prolonged, 4 quarters, 5 quarters or more, then you start talking about depression, a situation whereby, there is high rate of unemployment, income levels are low, and then perhaps poverty would increase, business activities at a low level. And that's where, during the depression, as our friend Tokwe knows, the solution at that time was massive government spending in line with Keynesian position. That spending, took the economies out of the depression which it suffered, and so on.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Michael Badandeh, for your explanation. Let's return to Dr. Ibrahim Muhammad Adam in Kano Network Center. And of course, this prefatory statement I'm going to make applies to all our 3 guests. Part of what we have struggled with over the last 30 years or more in this economy, especially since the introduction of the second-tier foreign exchange market in 1986 by way of structural adjustment, has to do with the disparity between the official rate, even when sometimes it was pronounced there was no official rate, and the parallel market rate. And it has been a mirage over the past 3 decades to merge the two rates. From time to time, you hear of the comments made by international finance institutions such as the IMF and World Bank that the disparity, of course, points to the distortion in the economy. Some persons would also argue that, no, the parallel rate is the more realistic rate. And so with the government, the central bank, the monetary policy authorities have been at this game of seeking, as it were, to bridge the gap between the parallel rate and the official rate. Sometimes we succeed in getting close to it, but we have seen in recent times the wide margin between the I&E window and the parallel market rate, leading, of course, to cries about speculative attacks against our currency. Tokwe spoke to that briefly a while ago, but why is our Naira always so susceptible to speculative attacks? And as you know, the value of the Naira versus the dollar is one of the critical indices that drive the cost of living in this country.
Thank you very much. The activities of the unauthorized and illegal forex dealers is attributing to the disparity between the two. If you go to the bank with your legitimate request, the bank will honor it. But because we have these brood chains with all sorts of illegal practices, they always get this currency at official rate, and they will sell it at the parallel market rate. And of course, if you go to the parallel, the black market, you see that they are always available, though very high. And if you go to the banks, of course, there are protocols. You must follow those protocols for you to be able to access or secure the forex. So I think what the CBN is doing now is in the right direction. The brood change are actually, and other black marketers are actually contributing to the disparity. So if the deposit money banks, what is critical here is the CBN must actually monitor these deposit money banks to ensure that they always honor and deal with legitimate requests from legitimate customers. Because we have a lot of issues with the banks themselves, the deposit money banks or the commercial banks. They tend to, in some cases, people will approach them or customers approach them with legitimate requests, but they could not get through. So I think all those unauthorized and illegal operators, they must be eliminated for headway. And this require a concerted effort on the part of the Afex Bank and all other stakeholders involved. This will help in making the official rate to always prevail.
All right, thank you indeed. Kingsley, I think the matter here of issue of prior market and official market has been there, like you said, over 30 years ago now.
Yes.
And now that the BDCs have been shut down, they're still operating. They're still operating. And the issue he raised concerning what happens in banks, when legitimate persons or people who have genuine requests to go to the bank and asked to, go through some processes, some of them cumbersome, some of them, at long last, will not get the forex. While if you go to the black market, you get it very freely, very, very easily. You get it. It may be higher, but you get it. So this is part of the issues that we need to tackle, the central bank need to tackle. For now, we would like to speak to that, but that will be after the break. Stay tuned. We'll be back very shortly.
Well, the housing solution we have developed is a multifaceted one. First, we have tried to lead a program to build what we think will be an acceptable and hopefully affordable housing type based on surveys we did in 2015, 2016 and construction that started in 2017. And that's going on in 34 states as the National Housing Program.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
See, nurse, she's saying she feels unwell, despite my efforts to practice good hygiene.
Mom says wash your hands to keep the germs away.
Washing hands is good, but surfaces can also have germs, and you shouldn't use just anything for cleaning them. Use Jik. Jik's formula has been scientifically proven to stay active for longer, giving you whitening and germ kill protection on a variety of surfaces. Disinfect to protect, just Jik it. Endorsed by National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives.
Every day, he looks after his brother and chases a bus. Every day, he looks after his brother, chases a bus, and learns new things. Every day, he looks after his brother, chases a bus, learns new things, and gets back home. Every day, he looks after his brother, chases a bus, learns new things, gets back home, and helps his mum. Phew! That's why every day he needs his cup of Milo, packed with the nutritious goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa. Milo, the energy to go further.
From Nestle.
Dear compatriots, our country can be as great as we want.
Let us all commit ourselves to its greatness.
We must be willing to set aside our differences, unite and stay as one.
In our expansive landmass, human and material resources, and plurality lies our strength.
Let our challenges lead us to rediscover our common ground, and together, let's find solutions.
This will take some time, so it requires patience, tolerance, and forgiveness from every one of us.
Let all hands come on deck to protect and transform our country.
Let us unite and see each other not as adversaries, but as brothers and sisters.
Together, we can build a better Nigeria for ourselves and for the next generations.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA, with support from Nigerian.
All right, well, thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Well, let's bring in again our guest here seated in the studio, Tokwe Faso. Speak to this issue of parallel markets and official market with respect to Forex. We've had this issue for a very long time, and the CBN, using its powers as the apex bank of Nigeria to say, look, enough is enough. We're going to see how we turn things around to see how Nigerians can legitimately get Forex without going through rigors, occasioned by the fact that we have so many of bureau de change operators in this country.
Well, it's a very interesting case, and however, something that we must actually start trying to solve, as it were. Let's unpack the market. So I will not agree with Dr. Adam that until you eliminate, all the black market players and so on. If, for example, I have $50 in my pocket and I say, well, I'm not going to any bank to sell this money. I will sell to any friend of mine at the rate that I will determine. That is a black market. You can call it a black market, but it's my decision. So in any market, you are going to see speculators. You're going to see people who are buying to use for legitimate transactions. You're going to even see people like what they call day traders, people who want to buy in the morning and sell at night and make a profit and go. You're going to find hedgers, people who are trying to buy to keep because they're going to need Forex at some point in time, like businesses, So we have to understand that every sort of people will have to play. The difference here and what CBN is trying to solve is that, you remember in times past, 20 years, 30 years ago, when I started banking, like in 1992, thereabouts, there were these same malams on the streets, and they never got money from central bank. However, and then they made 1 or 2 naira spread, and they were okay. 1 or 2 naira from the official rates, and they were okay. But it became a free-for-all at some point in time, and everybody got on board, and everybody wants to make 100 naira. You want to go to CBN and obtain dollar cash as a BDC, quote and unquote, at 398, and step out to sell at 500 naira, making 102, 103 naira spread for doing nothing, And of course, because the numbers have become so many, the central bank itself cannot supervise them anymore. It becomes a moot point, because if you want to have returns to be filed on a weekly basis by 5,000, 6,000 entities, where are you going to start? How many staff do you have that's going to go through all of them to know what's going on? And of course, there's so much shenanigans going on at that level, So where to go now? I believe that, like I said earlier on, the central bank must be sure that it's able to stand up and meet the legitimate transaction. The central bank deals with all sorts of documentations on a daily basis, the banks as well, at the conduit pipe. The reason why they moved that function back to the banks, and I believe the banks can handle those transactions, is because the banks have a lot to lose. In times past, we have seen scenarios where banks have been suspended from doing Forex for 6 months or longer. Bank MDs can be removed based on fraudulent transactions. They have a lot more to lose. And so I can see a scenario where bank MDs will tell their operators and say, my friend, you cannot come and do things anyhow that you want here because there's so much to lose. You see, there's a chunk of this. For example, BDCs and all these other smaller players are not supposed to be doing import transactions. I've seen instances where importers have come, including respected institutions and chambers of commerce, and then they say, because the CBN has cut off supply to BDCs, direct giving dollar to BDCs, that therefore they are having problems, they cannot source funds for their businesses. I mean, it's a self-indictment that BDCs, you're saying that BDCs are giving money to importers. The role of BDCs, Bureau de Change, is that they should give money to people who want to travel, BTA, PTA transactions. And you can see that now, until recently when the travel thing is picking up, there's not been much travel anywhere around the world. And so if you say you're giving money to travelers, and maybe 5,000 of you or 6,000 of you getting $30,000, which is about $180 million every 2 weeks, who is collecting that money? So the manufacturers should not indict themselves by saying that non-funding of the BDCs has led to a scenario where they can't access funds, because BDCs are not supposed to give money to manufacturers at all. People should understand in this country, when you get a license to do something, stick to your license. And in fact, I must say that the fact that they have a license and they're regulated, that is where the money is. The money is actually in regulation. When a business is regulated, the banks are regulated now. That means that I cannot come today and say, oh, Tokwe Bank, and I put a signboard there and say I'm a bank. But because they're regulated, that sector is protected. And because it's protected, no Victor and Harry can barge into that business and begin to erode their businesses. Go and look at unregulated businesses. Go to the market. Anybody can sell pepper. But that means that anybody can undercut them. You know, you can move there and crash your own price and do whatever it is you want to do. You can manipulate them. You can buy them off because the market is not regulated. You can have oligopolies, monopolies, and so on. But in this instance now, the real thing is that you are regulated, you have a BDC license, stick to your license. And ab initio, what BDC should do is to get money from tourists and sell back to tourists. So things like BTA, PTA, things like you want to go for health check or your, surgeries abroad, they should be able to sell to you. School fees, exactly, and that's where it ends. What they call invisible trade transactions, Form A transactions, okay, is what BDC should handle. So, however, it's a major issue, this foreign exchange thing, and I believe that in order to tackle what's going on, there's been that other issue about Aboki effects or whatever last week, which also made it to the Monetary Policy Committee, communique. The point is that CBN must be ready to, in fact, they should issue a statement expanding a little bit more. For example, I want to go to Ghana recently. They say, oh, no, if you're going to Ghana, it's not eligible. I'm going to spend dollars in Ghana. So why would you say I can't do that? I know their fear. Their fear is that, okay, since you don't need a visa to go to Ghana, you see all Nigerians saying they're going to Ghana but there has to be a way. There has to be a way around it. They say, well, if your travel is not longer than 3 hours or so, you can't even get the BTA. If you are probably going to, I don't know, I think maybe Rwanda qualifies, but if you are going maybe somewhere 3 hours. So they need to go back and expand that scope a bit to let people know that legitimate transactions can be met. And we hear also that people, manufacturers are getting maybe only a fraction of what they bid for. Every 2 weeks, they come together, they put in their papers, want to buy raw materials, want to bring in this or that. By now we shouldn't be hearing about things like that. If you are rationing to them and giving them any rate, any proportion of their demands that you want, that means that there'll be a certain amount that's going into the black market. Then there's these 43 items that have been banned. Or no, not banned really. They have been restricted from getting direct funds from central bank. It's very important. Now, I personally support that policy, personally, okay? Because we look at things like toothpick, things like fish, things like meat, things like vegetables, things like eggs, things like Indian incense.
Wheelbarrow.
Things like rice or, salt. We should be able to produce this kind of thing here ourselves. I support that policy. So if we narrow it down to that, and I must say also that my study shows that almost every country has that same policy, one way or the other. If you are going to the US now, even if they see one tomato in your bag, they take it out.
Exactly.
They protect their agricultural industry. They may not. Everybody tries to conform with the WTO rules, and now you know that it's our sister that is there. Okay, but the point is that you will never say that you are banning anything. Yeah, but you put tariff, you put standards. But now you can see that many times, a lot of our exports from here get rejected from abroad on the basis of standard, and that's some of the ways that they a lot of our agricultural exports, that's some of the way that they protect the agricultural industry. So if we are narrowed down to, okay, these 43 items on that we are trying to protect our industry, and we have said, okay, we are not giving them cheap forex, okay, plus we can slam them a very high tariff, then we can manage that problem. If we have a scenario where the difference between this black market and this black market will not go, that's what I'm saying to you. The black market will not go, but it's not a concern of the central bank per se. If they keep an eye on it, they shouldn't make it an official policy to state what's going on in the black market. It's not their business. If anybody wants to sell at any rate, they have always been there making 2 naira, 3 naira in this country.
But the issue has to do with the speculative attacks.
Yes.
That's the
an
issue.
Organized attack.
Yes, because the black market rides on that, and the perception also grows from the black market rate. You will hear,
Absolutely.
you've complained about, rightly so, about some manufacturers saying that, oh, this is the parallel market rate at which they're having to source their imports, and so it's not good for business. Traders, you hear them, oh, this is the rate, and so you go. Prices of items are just rising virtually on a daily basis. Yes. I would like Professor Mike Obadan to also respond to this question. Professor Mike Obadan at Benin Network Center, how can we, I say we now, that will include the monetary policy authorities and other Nigerians, more effectively police the forex market and therefore fend off speculative attacks that are so rife now against our national currency?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. But before that, let me quickly address the earlier question you posed to all of us, to the three of us. And of course, let me start with Kyrian's question. He says BDCs are still operating. Yes, and the reason is that their licenses have not been revoked. What has happened is that they are barred from accessing official foreign exchange. And what is likely to happen is that over time, those institutions, those enterprises, the BDCs are likely to fade away. And the operators, if they so choose, may decide to integrate formally with the parallel market. That will be their business. And they are still having some quasi, relationship because their licenses have not been taken away from them. Now, Kingsley mentioned the issue of disparity between official exchange rate and the parallel market rate since the structural adjustment program. Yes, you are right. But let me also say that there were some periods when the rates tended to merge. I think from the data, we even saw some point when the parallel market rate was a little lower than the official rate. And the reason for that, Kingsley, is that at such periods, we have large stock of foreign exchange reserves, around 2007, 2008, 2009, when we had over $60 billion in external reserves. When you have such a situation, then there is enough foreign exchange to defend the naira. So the rate tend to be low and then stable. And when you have excess demand for imports, or the stock of foreign exchange reserves is very low, or inflows of foreign exchange are on the very low side, just trickling in, as we have now, you then find a situation whereby there is pressure on the exchange rate. I think that is what has been happening because the country is not earning enough foreign exchange. And so the parallel market, I will say, will continue to exist. That is why the name parallel, they will continue to exist to the extent that Nigeria does not earn, large quantities of foreign exchange from exports. And then, the situation whereby the demand, will be very high and the country's currency is not a convertible currency, there will continue to be the parallel market. But let me say that the quantity available to the parallel market for transactions is very small in relation to what you have in the totality of the Nigerian economy. And because of that, desperate transactors, economic agents, would always go to the parallel market and want to buy foreign exchange at whatever price. And most of these people, economic agents, buy foreign exchange from the parallel market for illicit financial flows, for the purposes of financing corruption. So my advice would be that we as a people must, ignore the exchange rates that come out of the parallel market. Such rates cannot determine or guide the official foreign exchange rate because the market is microscopic. And as Stockwell and the other guest speaker will know, there is a methodology in economics for empirically determining the exchange rate in a country, and that is the equilibrium, exchange rate, which can be calculated. And once that is calculated, it gives guidance on what the exchange rate should be, not the parallel market rate. So the parallel market rate must be ignored for whatever it is. And then I think the question posed by Kingsley, can you please remind me a bit?
Michael Banner, in a sense, you've already answered the question. I was asking, how can we, all stakeholders, more effectively police the forex market so that we fend off the speculative attacks against our national currency? And in asking this, is there a need also to summon the requisite political will?
Well, in that regard, I will assure that the central bank has the necessary political will to ensure that foreign exchange transactions are carried out, as required, and that the deposit money banks behave as expected. And, monitoring and surveillance of the foreign exchange activities of the deposit money banks is being intensified and heightened. And like Tokwe rightly said, central bank has the arsenal to sanction erring commercial banks, that engage in sharp practices, in the foreign exchange market. And so they should not take the central bank or monetary authority for granted. And we as a people, if we, agree to be more patriotic, then we should not deliberately be engaging in illegalities and promoting speculative attacks, on the Naira through the activities of the parallel market. I think both the citizens and the government have a responsibility, knowing fully well that there is no time that we will have so much foreign exchange, that can just guarantee, the wiping out of the parallel market.
Thank you so much. It's been a very interesting conversation this morning, revolving around the resolutions of the Central Bank of Nigeria's Monetary Policy Committee. A number of issues have been raised, and I think that we need another day for another discussion on this very issue, as we have not really landed, so to speak. There is no way we can exhaust such a conversation. All right, at this point, we'd like to appreciate our guest this morning for being there. Professor Michael Baden, as always, he's always here with us when we talk about monetary policies. Professor of Economics and member, CBN Monetary Policy Committee. Thank you again. Dr. Ibrahim Muhammad Adam, Chairman, Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, Jigawa Chapter. It's been nice talking to you this morning on this very important topic. And again, Faso, thank you indeed for your insights. Of course, you have made this conversation very much more interesting.
Let me thank Professor Badan. He was my external examiner in 1991 for my project in economics. But now I have a PhD in public policy.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. All right. Okay, that's it for today. Let's take sports.
Rivers United are through to the next round of the CAF Champions League following a 1-0 win against Tanzanian club Young Africans in Port Harcourt on Sunday. The Port Harcourt dwellers killed through 2-0 on aggregate. Substitute Uche Nwosonaya netted the winning goal for the Stanley Ekobus men 9 minutes from time. Rivers United will face Faisal Kenama of Ethiopia or Al Hilal of Sudan